Hello and welcome again to the Brothers Get In podcast, the show on how to create more prepared, more resilient and more responsible human beings. My name is Stuart, aka Gads the Younger.
Cool. You haven't come up with a better name than Gads the Younger yet?
Well, I like sexy Gads.
I think you should rock it.
Yeah.
Definitely rock it. And by the way, this is Dr. Anthony again, here again with the other sexy Gads.
In today's episode, what we're going to discuss is a scenario. So every now and then we're going to chuck in these scenario episodes where we actually outline a bit of a disaster or something that's gone wrong and how we would personally tackle it, and some thoughts and things that we've seen in the past on how to take on these type of disasters. I like these kind of scenario planning things.
And I think, look, we'll give you our point of view, but it's just get the ideas flowing, to get you thinking about how would you handle it in your situation. Doesn't have to be the same answer, but let's give it a go.
Yeah, and if you've got something that's totally different to what we're talking about, or you feel like there's something we've omitted or totally forgotten, please feel free to chuck it in the comments in whatever format you are listening to this podcast on, which could be Apple Podcast or Spotify or iHeartRadio or YouTube. There's probably a couple others that I'm forgetting there, but it's on all the major ones.
Excellent. Let's get on with it.
All right, cool. So today's scenario actually comes from a magazine called Recoil Offgrid. This comes from issue 44, and it's about critical supply lines that have been indefinitely interrupted. Pertinent for today because we are currently sitting here in Canberra, Australia, during the eggpocalypse.
The eggpocalypse.
The eggageddon.
We have no eggs.
There are no bun nuts on the shelves right now.
Anywhere.
Bird flu has struck and people are freaking out and we're just not getting eggs.
I mean, this isn't the first time something like this happened. Probably won't be the last time either.
No, I mean, just cast your mind back a couple of years and we can think about what happened with COVID and can I say that? Anyway, it's out there now. People fighting in the aisles over toilet paper.
Where would you be without your toilet paper?
So I think this is something that's worthwhile thinking about because, I will label myself here a prepper. It's something that I put a bit of thought into and a bit of effort and usually a bit of money too into. It's where I spend my dollars prepping for disasters that could happen and things like this. And I looked at what happened during the whole lockdown schmozzle and where our supply chains were disrupted at that point. And I thought, well, at least Australia will learn.
Yeah, good one.
And we haven't. Here we are again.
Without our supply chain working or losing contact with the things that we need to survive.
Just to put it in perspective too, this egg thing. Now you've witnessed kids selling eggs on the street at $20 an egg?
Yep, they just hold them up, standing. So as soon as we went down to the supermarket looking for eggs, the shelves had been stripped bare. There were, bits of egg and bits of box everywhere as the riots had cleared, and the staff down there at the local supermarket, which I won't mention who they are, were sweeping away the bodies and whatnot. And then, that's incredible. Why are there no eggs anywhere? And then there's this little kid with his little box of eggs. $5 an egg. Who wants an egg? $5 an egg. I thought, that's genius.
Oh, damn. That's capitalism right there. All right, let's jump into the scenario today. So, as I said, from Recoil Offgrid, which is an American magazine, so please excuse some of the Americanisms in it, and it will be set in an American town, but we're going to tackle it from our own personal perspective here in
Please
Canberra.
Excuse Stuart's very poor American accent.
I'm not even going to try. All right. That dog won't sing. All right. So the scenario that we're looking at, we've got a long-term supply shortage. It is you, your spouse, and your children. Location is in a major city. It's summer, and they're saying it's hot in this magazine here, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 32 in Celsius.
It's not hot,
That's not hot.
but maybe for Americans,
Well, it's set in Illinois, and that's pretty cold place. So I guess maybe they think 32 is hot. Whatever. All right, the setup. You live in a major city that has been under siege with non-stop civil unrest. The weeks of ongoing riots have not only forced many city centres and local businesses to close, but have also interrupted commerce for the average citizen. Everything from supermarkets to hardware stores have stopped receiving deliveries. Roadblocks, because of protests, as well as trucks being looted, have not only made it difficult to conduct business, but some companies are flat out refusing to send their drivers into areas where their lives are in danger. Curfews and limited public movement have only exacerbated your inability to replenish supplies you used to take for granted. Store shelves are empty. Fighting over what's available is a regular occurrence, and you have no clue when things will subside enough for life to resume as normal. The complication on this: since you're not able to just pick up and leave your home that easily, and the suburbs have experienced a run on their supplies, you're forced to improvise with what you have and stretch supplies as far as you can make them last. Of course, travelling through areas that are fraught with unrest comes with its own risks. Not to mention the fact that there are long lines at gas stations due to a diminished fuel supply. It's summertime, and the heat only makes a bad situation worse. The scarcity and chaos are weighing heavily on the mental state of an already agitated local population. Although mail has continued to be delivered, unlikely in Australia, you fear that USPS may be the next link in the chain to break. Services like UPS, DHL, and FedEx have stopped delivering goods in order to protect their staff, making it somewhat difficult to purchase supplies via e-commerce.
Are you sure this isn't Canberra? It sounds a lot like Canberra.
This has happened.
I mean, we've literally only got two roads into the place. We've got Tuggeranong down to the south, Belconnen to the north, full of dangerous people coming through there. I'm surprised anything gets through to Canberra full stop, let alone in a crisis.
They're on the edge already.
They're permanently on the edge. Now with the Eggageddon going on, I don't know how people are surviving.
It's crazy. It's crazy out there. So I'm reminded of a story that a bit of a yarn of what happened to me when the pandemic first kicked off. I was actually in Indonesia teaching a course at the time, so I was over there teaching a media crew. And as just before I was leaving, this whole COVID thing started to kick off, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit sketchy. And I checked with a few people, and they said, no, it's all going to be okay. Everything's fine. I said, all right, it's a 4-day trip. Should be okay. Okay. Things can't go that bad in 4 days. So I fly over, I get to Jakarta, I get out, I set up, then start the teaching, and I'm watching the news, obviously, and it's getting worse and worse and worse back home. And finally, on the day before I'm meant to leave to go home, our PM comes out, Prime Minister, comes out and says, we're basically shutting down Australia. We've made the decision. Get home now. I'm like, cool. I've got flights. Everything's fine. I'm keeping an eye on flights, and I'm watching flights deteriorate in front of my eyes. My flight, luckily, did not disappear, but many people's flights disappeared. So I, at this time, am living out in a wilderness block, 100 acres of wooded property in an old, disused, broken down bus, like a weirdo. That's a whole nother story we're not going to get into, but I'm out in the middle of nowhere. It's a place that does get flooded in, so I have some stuff out there, but I thought I'm going to get ahead of the curve here. And so I get on to a major supermarket in Australia, and if you're Australian, there's only a couple of them. So one of those monopolies, and I pre-order food to be delivered when I get home. So I go through the kerfuffle of coming in to Australia, get home, and as I land in Australia, I turn my phone on, and this particular supermarket has sent a message saying, we're sorry, we are no longer delivering. Which means I now have to go into an enforced 2-week lockdown with no food. No extra food, at least.
No extra food.
Yeah. Interesting little real-life scenario there.
Yeah. So I think that goes to prove, look, we're not that far away from these kind of scenarios. We think we're pretty safe in our homes, and we often live our lives as if we're always going to see the next meal coming. But this may not always be true. Now, I picked up that you said, it was 4 days out. 4 days out. And I want to probably start this with people thinking, how long could you survive for in just what you have your house now? If things shut down within the next 30 minutes, before you can get to the shops, before you can get to the fuel station, how much have you got in your house, in your car, to survive? I'd wager a bet it's not much longer than 4 days.
No, I would actually be surprised if the average Australian has 4 days worth of food in their house. Like eating at a regular pace.
Yeah, without rationing. Yep.
How long do you think you'd survive? You and your family?
Well, I mean, dogs barbecue up pretty well, so maybe that might give us a couple extra days.
I ain't eating my dog, man. I'm not doing it. I've got slow neighbours. I'll eat them first.
It's good for the dogs too.
Yep. So, both of us have travelled to places that have been in various states of collapse before, and one of the signs of a collapse in a society is that these supply chains get knocked down. And I'm thinking, probably for you, maybe when you responded to the earthquakes that happened over in Kathmandu. For me, I went over to Venezuela in 2019. They were going through, a big economic crash and societal sort of collapse over there. And it was interesting watching the supply chain disruption and what effects that actually has and how quickly it happened. Because we can often think about these places and you look at them on the news and go like, oh, that's a shithole. It's a crap place. But Venezuela, Caracas, this was a major city that was quite cosmopolitan, that was quite well off.
Yeah.
And it turned bad very, very quickly.
I do see that the people or the places that are affected more are these inner cities, inner suburbs. In Australia, we're notorious for building suburbs everywhere. The rural people survive a whole lot better. Now, when we went over to Kathmandu, we went over for a set period of time, and we had to be self-sustainable for that entire period of time because we knew the supplies wouldn't be available for the locals. We didn't need to burden them, so we had to make self-sustainable. But when we hit the ground, we saw in the city itself, they were already struggling. We went out to visit the people that hadn't been seen yet to help them with medical aid in the rural regions, in the remote regions, and they're surprisingly, I think, doing a lot better off because they don't have the dependence on that supply chain from day to day. They depend more on what's around. They live it. They live what's with them day to day, and they can't depend on those supply chains. Whereas the cities and, I'd say, suburbias would suffer a lot more during these scenarios.
Yeah, it is actually like quite a scary thought to me. I'm not nearly as prepared as I would like to be, and I don't really know anyone who is. I've never met somebody who's like, yeah, I'm totally ready for everything. Oh, I have met a couple of people like that, but
I've met a couple of people that think they are.
Yeah, I don't think they actually are. And I live more rurally than you do. But even there, like I think I would fare better, or my community would fare better than the city here. But even there, I think there would be issues, major issues.
Well, I mean, look at the egg-a-getting at the moment. Canberra is starving for eggs. Now, I know if we go half an hour out from your reports earlier today, that there's eggs.
Oh, heaps of eggs.
They're out there.
There was a wall of eggs.
Hiding out there.
Not hurting for eggs out there. So what I want to tackle this, or the way I want to tackle this, first off, I want to think about this from the perspective of being unprepared. So this has happened. I'm not prepared, or we're not prepared. What can we do? How can we extend things out? How can we source, food that we need? Because we don't know. Like, things could remedy themselves, but they've been bad in this scenario for an amount of time. We haven't been able to get new stuff in. We are getting low on supplies here. What are we going to do? How are you going to tackle this?
And what do you need? What do you really need? We've talked about food, always talking about food, but water, energy to supply your devices and things like that you run today, to keep heat or cool or whatever it might be in that particular scenario. What do you actually need to survive longer than 24 hours?
This is something that's always been of interest to me, and I'm particularly, I feel poor at doing it, is doing a budget of input. So thinking about what you utilize in any given day or week is generally a good time period to look at it and go, okay, what did I have to actually go out and purchase? What am I utilizing? I kind of do it without thinking. Like I'll pick up coffees and I'll just grab random things as I need them from the shops, without fully thinking things through. How and if that stopped, how much of a shortfall would there actually be? Most Australians now live in cities, and most people who live in cities are affected by the system that we have, which is called the just-in-time inventory system. So we live a just-in-time inventory system life. Now, for those who've never heard that term before, what that actually means is a supermarket no longer buys up bulk ingredients and food and stores it in the back of the shop. I used to work in a major supermarket when I was growing up as a teenager, and there was still a little bit of that going on, but it was less and less. Now, they track to the item things going out of their store, and as they go out, it's already on a reorder. And so those things will be coming back in on the system. But that means they don't store stuff there. So as those trucks stop, it is a very short time until there is nothing on the shelves. A lot of people don't understand that. If trucks stop in Australia, we starve.
Absolutely. I think that's quoted, that quote of, if the trucks stop, Australia stops, a lot of the times by the truckers every now and again when they're having a bit of a crisis with the government and whatnot. And it is literally true. The way we are set up in society, in Australian society at the moment, means that if these kind of things fall down, we all fall down around it. So we need to think broader. How do we bring that in? So getting back to, how do we survive? How do you survive as an individual as soon as you've heard everything has shut down? What do you need? So making a list of what you actually need over the next few days would be a good starting point. I need food for me, my family, my dogs, and I need water. They're probably the two essential things that you're going to be looking for out there. After that, if you've got vehicles, you're going to want fuel. You need fuel for your vehicles because you can only walk so far and roam so far. So if you need to, and as we stated before, look, some of these concentric circles of being short supplied work close into the city and the suburbs. So you have to move out and back to get these things.
Well, another thing with this scenario is that there's civil unrest going on. So it's dangerous to be out on the streets. You can mitigate that to a certain extent by being in a vehicle. So no fuel, no vehicle, means you're on foot, means you're exposed to more threat.
Absolutely. And I think one thing we're missing here is we often talk about in these small circles of how we work in ourselves and with our family. But one of our under-thought about resources, I think, is people. The more people you can have together looking after each other, that's how we developed communities and societies and tribes in the old days. It's looking after each other. We're now separated by our 6-foot hedge and fence and everything else. And we don't have that same community contact that we once had. Re-establishing your community contacts could be vital to saving your life and your family's life if you do that. Just as much, if not more, as getting the water, getting the fuel, getting the food in place. You need to re-establish these relationships with people again.
All right, so as per the scenario, we are getting very low on food. We have deemed that we cannot or will not travel very far, and even if we did, it wouldn't be that fruitful. And our family's getting hungry. Where are we going to source food?
So we're going to have a look around our immediate area for food. What have we got? Now, if you're fortunate enough or you're forethought enough of that, do you have a veggie garden? Some fruit trees in your yard? I know I've got an apple tree and a couple of other trees in the backyard. Have you grown any edible foods on your patio? Anything like that? And then coming back, what about your friends or neighbours that you may have contact with? And then what have you got to trade with them? So looking around, is there any animal movement in your area? Birds, pigeons, lizards, snakes, bugs. We're down to looking to the more primal things to find right in your household. What is available?
Most houses and the surrounding areas will have a lot of bugs. People don't like to eat bugs. People don't like to even talk about eating bugs nowadays. Because of conspiracy theories and elites trying to feed us bugs or something. But in reality, if you've ever tried survival in the wilderness before, that's just another source of calories, of potential food that you can get access to, which is actually very easy to get access to because you don't have to expend a lot of calories to get it.
So that sort of gives us some idea. We've got to start foraging and looking around really close and start moving around to try and find that extra bit of food. I think just put as food, we've got to find water, clean, drinkable water. In our taps running now in most countries or most cities in Australia, we have clean water. We take it for granted that water is clean and drinkable at all times. So we're going to have to look for water, find water, and then make it drinkable. And what have we got to do that?
Fire.
Fire's good. Fire's one of the best ways to sterilise water.
It's usually the first one that I sort of think of. I've got many ways to clean water, in and around my house because I'm into this kind of stuff, right?
I can guarantee most people didn't think of fire first up. Most people think of the gadgets and the filters and the chemicals that they can put in there. But fire, it's very cheap, very easy, and it works probably the best. You don't have to boil your water for 5 minutes or get it up to 100 degrees. Just get it above 60 degrees. It'll kill just about anything that's not good for you. And there you go. Clean water. Cool it down and drink it.
Is that recommended doctor advice right there?
It is.
One thing with water as well, if like boiling water is, I think it's gold standard really when it comes to cleaning water. Another thing we can do, and I'm starting to think about, okay, what do we have access to in the house? What can we do? Because you might not have water filters, charcoal filters, and Puri tabs and things like that. Like chlorine tablets. A lot of households have some form of bleach in there, and bleach can be used to clean water.
It can. The only two problems I have with this theory is, one, bleach is often used in the household. It has some other chemical dilute in it to make it smell pretty.
Yep.
Two, have you ever tried drinking bleached water?
No.
It's disgusting.
I have made it and smelt it and was like, I'm not really willing to scull this down. In a pinch, though.
In a pinch. Absolutely in a pinch.
By the way, if you're listening to this is not like recommendations or advice on, how to hydrate. We're not talking about, just don't pour bleach into a glass of water. I'm trying to think of the formula, and I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but I think it's like 2 drops of bleach to 4 litres of water. It's a minute amount of bleach that you actually need to put in the water.
Very smart.
And then you should leave it for a while to allow it to kind of dissipate out.
Yep.
But, when we're thinking about water, this is an option. Another option is, again, the gadgets people think about is UV treatment, using UV light and UV filters on water. But we have another access to UV in sunlight.
Yeah.
So you can actually hang water in a clear container out in the sun, it takes a lot longer. Like the recommendation that I've seen is usually around 8 hours of full sunlight on a bottle of water, and that will kill off a lot of, or I believe it actually denatures the proteins of a lot of the bad little things in there.
Using things like strong cordial, sugar will kill bacteria if it's strong enough.
Really?
Use that, maybe with a bit of your bleached water, makes it taste a whole lot better. With a bit of raspberry cordial.
What about maple syrup?
That'll work.
Yeah?
Look at that.
All right. I'm going to start stocking up on maple syrup then. Not start, I already have. If you've ever been in my pantry, you'd get the joke. Or I'll just one-up you and just drink maple syrup.
Yeah.
Don't talk about diabetes. All right. Other things we can forage. I'm thinking weeds.
Weeds, yeah. A lot of things that we think are weeds are probably quite edible. And knowing the difference between the poisonous ones and the non-poisonous ones is absolutely valuable information. I remember learning this as part of growing up in the Scouts. That was part of the survival thing, what weeds are edible and what aren't. And I also remember staying with one of my uncles up in Alice Springs and getting shown some of the weeds that could actually help hydrate you and help you survive out the bush whilst up there. But we pay off a lot of weeds, and weeds are just plants that growing somewhere where we don't want them to, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad plants.
One that always gets me, people spend an inordinate amount of time and effort and money trying to destroy dandelions. And dandelion is a freaking superfood.
Yeah.
You can eat almost all parts of a dandelion. You can eat the leaves as a salad. You can eat the flowers on it. You can eat the stems if you really want to. And you can eat the root. It's a great plant, and it's quite good for you as well. So look out for dandelions.
And you look how hardy they are. A lot of these plants they call weeds, but have a look. If you want to design a garden, theoretical sake, for survival, it can look beautiful. It can have lots of hardy plants in it, and lots of edible plants can fit into that category. We have a lot of ornamental plants that we cover our gardens with these days, with trees and just plain grass. Not usable, not particularly usable at all. Whereas you can use a lot of these so-called weeds to plant around your house, still look very nice and be edible and ready to go.
Just before, I just want to go back because you just talked about Alice Springs. I just want to touch on that quickly because what's going on in Alice Springs right now?
Curfews shut down. The place is getting locked down due to unprecedented violence in the town, and they've now locked it down. You cannot be out and about at night or you will be locked up by the authorities.
I just want to touch on that because quite often with these sort of scenarios, you're listening to them. I listen to other podcasts and they've got these scenarios and they're fantastic sort of things, as in they're kind of fantasies. And fun things to think about, but like what we're talking about here is not only a possible thing, like this is actually playing out in Australia right now in certain ways. Obviously, we're not having a full supply chain shutdown. It's just eggs at the moment here where we are. But like Alice Springs, I would imagine it's probably having some concerns where if you were a delivery person in Alice Springs, you probably would be thinking, is it worth my life to go out in the streets right now and try and deliver this Amazon package or whatever? So, you know, just to hit the point home that like these situations do happen and they happen quite regularly. It's worthwhile thinking about and preparing for. And speaking of preparing for it, I want to jump ahead now because we've kind of been talking about, okay, we're caught with our pants down a little bit and we're unprepared. So let's take a step back now, and we've got the ability to have forethought and, you know, see what's going to happen in the future, and we can prepare. So what things would you do to be better prepared for something like this? What would you want in your house?
In my house. So in my house, I want some sort of way to store or rotate food through. Have some stores thinking a couple of weeks ahead. when I set my food up. I want to have some sort of garden with edible that I can harvest. Maybe chickens, whatever else I like to eat. Maybe a small goat. I want to have a way to collect power free from the grid so I can plug in my electric car and drive around. Not that I have one. So I'm not reliant on power grid that gets shut down, that may be operated, that may get sabotaged in the way. Fuel's a difficult one. Fuel doesn't store, so you can't really keep a lot of fuel. But I need to consider how else would I get around without having fuel for mobilisation. If my yard's big enough, do I have a small pony or a horse? Or do I just have a bike, maybe a small electrical bike to get around?
I think that would be more feasible.
That'd be much more feasible.
Horse would be much cooler. But, fuel, like if you have a petrol vehicle, really, you're looking at about 3 months you could store fuel before it gets pretty manky without putting anything in it. You can put life extenders in it, other additives to it that it's going to extend it probably out to a year. Diesel is actually a bit better.
Yeah.
Diesel you can store for probably about a year just in of itself.
But I think a lot of it in part of this setup too is setting up the protocols of people like I was talking about, like setting up the rotating food in your cupboard. Maybe have a small storage thing out in a small shed out the back, and you rotate food from the shed to the house, and then you refill the shed at times. Your fuel, yes, it's limited, but if you make sure that you always have your fuel tanks above 3/4, don't let them run down to 1/2 and 1/4. Make sure that's always above 3/4 when you park it at night. At least it's going to be ready for a couple of days, at least.
I always say half is the new empty. That if you're going below half, you've done something wrong.
That's pretty reasonable, yeah.
Most modern vehicles with half a tank will go, 200, 300 Ks.
Yeah, should do.
At least. So it's enough to get you out of trouble. Yes. So now thinking about kind of extending this out a little bit and going kind of the next level, how can we be a bit more prepared and think about our family? And I'm going to slide a curly one in here for you as well before we get to the family thing. Medication.
Medications. So medication's important for some people more than others, but you want to have a good versatile med kit. Again, medications are things that do go off after a while. They might be usable, and you need to know their effects when they do go off and how long you can keep them for. Keep your med kit stocked. Keep one for the home and keep one mobile that you can carry around with you if you need to travel, and have them ready to go. Have things in your med kit that you know that you can use and that your family knows how to use if that comes down to it.
That's a real key thing for me, like with med kits. I see a lot of people get real excited about them, jump in, buy the all singing, all dancing med kit. And look, I'm going to put my hand up and say that I'm one of these people too, that I've done it. I.e., I've done very little suturing, and yet I've got a suture kit. So that's something that I need to work on. But for the main part, the majority of my med kits are just filled with stuff that I know how to use. That's one really key thing. It's like having med gear is great, but if you don't know how to use it, like it's good as bartering, I guess. Or maybe you hope that somebody comes along that knows how to use it.
Maybe, yeah. But otherwise, it's just a waste of money, time and space. So you need to fill your kits with things that you know how to use. It's no use having a chainsaw if you don't know how to use it.
Yeah. Should have 2 chainsaws. Now, you can shoot this one down, but this is something that I think about when there's disruptions, when supply chains can't get in for whatever reason. My mind generally wanders to this space here when it comes to medication, antipsychotic medication or variants of that, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. How many people, as a percentage of the population, are out there, are on them and require them? And if a supply chain disruption like this happened, what would be the effect of, en masse, all these people all of a sudden not having access to that?
Realistically, Not many. It's not a problem. There are a lot of people on antipsychotics and antidepressants and things like that. Most of them, without antidepressants and things like that, could probably live without them. Life would be as blue as it was before, but they could live without them. And people on antipsychotics, well, there'd be a very small percentage of those that are actually dangerous. And it'd take a while for that to take effect, and this could be months to years before they may get a kickback effect.
All right, so my Mad Max fantasies are just being shot down. That's cool. No, it actually eases a lot of my stress. It's just something that I worry about. Okay, so now we're extending out. We're thinking family, maybe pets as well, involved in there. So extending our food, our water, our medical supplies out, and included in that our pets or animals or livestock or whatever we have. So we're thinking maybe if we keep chickens, which might be an idea now that we know how fragile the egg supply is. And obviously both of us have dogs. So thinking about storing more for the dogs. How do we go about that? Do we have space to do that? Do we just do that with general biscuits, dog kibble, or do we think about alternatives for the dogs?
Absolutely. You've got to make sure that there's enough for you, for your animals, and for your whole family. So that's got to go into your equation of how much that you keep at any one time. I think, yes, any plan. You need a backup plan. So you can't just have plan A, but you need plan A, B, C, and D. So you need a way to keep up and improving and processing these plans to make sure that if the first one falls down, you've got something else to back it up and another way to back it up again. For some people, it will be tricky to have the space to store these sort of things, and they really will have to rationalise what they have. Dual-purpose items, dual-purpose foods, things like that. They'll really have to rationalise it very tightly. But if you've got the space, make it, organise it, and get it into position. So
here's a comment that I hear every now and then in the prepper circles that I sometimes roll in. If something goes wrong, I'm just going to plant a garden. I'm just going to start gardening and or farming. If something goes wrong, I'm just going to go hunting and hunt my food and grow my own food.
I love those comments because it's way too late by then. It's like these comments of, if something goes wrong, I'll just get a gun and fix things. And it's like, that's A, how difficult it would be to get one even when there's nothing going on, and B, where you're going to find these things and where you're going to get it from. I think they're interesting ideas, but yeah, those comments are very sort of common and need to be thought out a lot more.
Well, yeah, like you said, getting a firearm in Australia at least is pretty restrictive. It's a long process. I mean, it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination. It's doable. It just takes a long time and it's a bit of effort. Then on top of that, if you've never been hunting before, it's not exactly easy. Maybe I'm just a crap hunter. I don't know. But it's not just like, I just wander out. Oh, there's a deer. Bang. Got it. Cool. Now I just throw it on my shoulder and walk back, and then it magically turns into meat, and then I've got a cool cloak, deer skin cloak. There's a lot of effort and knowledge and skills required to actually turn a weapon into a meal at the end of the day. And I don't think people don't fully appreciate that. Even if you're not practicing this regularly, it's going to be really, really tough.
I think that along those lines, that knowledge skills gathering needs to be well in advance, because skills take time to develop. And it's not just hunting, it's preparing your food, it's preparing everything else that you do. It can be everything from changing a tyre on your car. But it's got to be prepared well in advance before you get anywhere near the critical event. Because by then, it is well and truly too late.
Gardening, on the other hand, even harder.
Yes.
And more heartbreaking. We've I'm just currently going through that heartbreak of my partner going out one morning and coming in. She's like, we've lost everything. The slugs or whatever have descended upon our garden and just decimated it.
I was going to say, was it the frost? But yeah, that was my second guess, was the snails.
No, like things are holding up against the frost okay, which is a little bit surprising. But, we've been at it. We've been doing this for a number of years now. So it's not our first rodeo when it comes to gardening, and we're starting to figure out what works in our area, which has some deep, hard frosts that come in. So, yeah, things were holding up to the frost all right, but not to the bugs.
And think about that. You're practiced and rehearsed at this. Imagine if that was your only food source and you come out one morning and it's all gone from the bugs.
That would be it. We'd be done. If we were relying on that food for survival, we ain't going to survive. It ain't happening.
Now, I know not everyone's got the space to grow things, but again, I think this comes in importantly of your resources as people. So your neighbours and that might have more space to grow something, or they might grow something different to you, and they'd be prepared to swap as things go along. Setting up these relationships and these communication of like, what do you grow? What do you do? And then finding something in between that you can supply is a really good idea.
Which I think will bring us into our final sort of idea and phase when we're thinking about this this scenario here, is the community element to it, that a man is not an island. The idea of the lone wolf survivor in an emergency is something that I used to kind of fantasize about when I was younger. Like, oh yeah, end of the world happens and I'm just gonna go it alone, gonna get a big dries a bone dusted jacket and ride a horse around with a shotgun and just survive like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings or something. It just doesn't work that way. And the amount of effort you have to put in just to sustain yourself from a survival standpoint is ridiculous. Like, I don't know how anyone, like, I'm sure there are people who can do it, right? People can do it, but why would you?
It takes a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. I don't know how people can do it alone, but why you would. We were built to be social creatures. There's a reason we developed to be tribes, because it works. It works really well.
Yep. So, like examples, I could probably make bread if I gave it a crack. It wouldn't be very good. I'm thinking it'd be pretty shitty bread, but my partner can and does, and it's fantastic. So that's like the division of labor. It's how we kind of got here as a society before we hit the systems that we've got and before we got industrialized and we started to get things like just-in-time inventory more recently. We lived in community and we depended on each other, and we didn't expect every single person to be great at every single thing or even to do every single thing. I could make the beer and that person could make the mead and we can trade, and, I can hunt and this person can grow veggies and et cetera, et cetera. So that development of that community isn't something that should wait until an emergency. Because it's kind of like the garden, right? That if you're going, I'll just wait till the emergency and then I'll connect with people and then we'll get something going, it's too late.
It's too late. You need to be out there making friends, finding out what each other needs right now to survive. This is where your real, true, long-term survival comes from. It's not that lone wolf thing. That lone wolf thing might work for you for 24, 48 hours, but it's not going to work day in, day out. If you want to survive with your family, you need to connect with other people and set that up now.
One last thing that I want to talk about here, about setting things up now. Well, we've got the opportunity. And that there is a backstory to this, to why this is in my mind. What if there wasn't the access to the information that we had? So, hey, I want to start gardening. How do I do that? I just jump on the internet and look it up. What if we didn't have the access to that for whatever reason? Where then do you go?
I guess like the old days, you've got to find the books, I guess. You've got to find the people that do know. Listen to them, learn from them, follow them around, and that's the way you store it in your head, as much as we did the old days. The net might be good to get you started, or might be good to find those right people to start showing you and teaching you, but you need to get out and find those people. That's the way to build a robust, solid, resilient community and nature.
And start doing it now. If you've been thinking about getting that book, do it now.
Find it now.
Build your own library. The backstory to this is I got an email today from one of my favourite online booksellers saying they've gone into receivership. They're gone under. It's a shame. It's a hard world to live in.
Yeah, online book community goes under.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just go to the bigger guy again. No, support local bookstores. That's what I'm trying to say. Well, anything else you'd like to add to this little scenario?
No, I think we've covered, we've had a look at the self, what you need to do to sort of survive your own thing, how to prepare your surroundings, and how to make best use of your surroundings, both immediately and then for the future, and then how to survive long-term, building your community of people around you for the long-term survival. And I think we've covered that all today.
If there was one thing as a takeaway you could throw out there, what do you think that would be?
Build your community. Get out there. I just cannot emphasize enough having good people around you as often as you can.
Yep. For me, I think it's similar to that. It's do it now. Don't wait for whatever thing to go wrong, for the supply chain to be destroyed before you're starting to think about this stuff, before you're starting to practice the skills. Get out and practice the skills now. Get out and learn the knowledge now. Get out and store the food. Get an extra, bit of food to tide you over, to turn you from 3 days to 3 weeks stored in your house, because it's here now. It's no, you never think about fixing the roof when it's sunny. It's when it's raining that you want to get up there and fix it, that leak in the roof.
And just think about how much, if you do all that now, if you know that you're prepared and you've got that in place, how much more relaxed you are, how much less anxious you will be, how much life will not be a crisis because you will be prepared for it. You will remove the crisis from the situation and it'll just be another day.
Beautiful. Well, on that point, we will wrap it up there. Thank you very much, brother.
Thank you very much. Brother.
Until next time. What are we up to now? Episode 5. So until episode 6.
See you then.
Stay safe and keep smiling.